What if I told you that most of your suffering comes from something that doesn't even exist? Sounds crazy, right? But that's exactly what Eckhart Tolle reveals in The Power of Now. We live trapped in the past or anxious about the future, but what about the present? What if true peace was only possible in the one moment that actually exists? The now. Stick with me until the end, because besides the transformative ideas in this book, there's a crucial concept at the end that can completely change the way you deal with your thoughts and emotions. Let's dive in. Eckhart Tolle wasn't born a guru. In fact, he spent years drowning in depression and anxiety. Then, at the age of 29, he had a profound awakening experience that changed everything. After that, he spent years studying and understanding human consciousness until he wrote The Power of Now, which became a worldwide phenomenon. But why is this book so important? Because it dismantles one of the biggest illusions we carry, the belief that our mind owns us. Tolle shows that suffering arises when we identify too much with our thoughts. Most people live believing that their identity is formed by their thoughts, memories, and life stories. From childhood, we build an image of ourselves based on past experiences and how others perceive us. Tolle warns us that this identity created by the mind is an illusion. It doesn't reflect our true essence. When we identify with this mental image, we get stuck in a cycle of self-definition that limits us. If someone sees themselves as anxious or insecure, for example, they reinforce that belief with every experience, even when reality offers opportunities to act differently. The problem with excessive identification with the mind is that it keeps us in a constant state of thinking, judging, and self-criticism. The internal dialogue becomes a prison. The mind never stops commenting, comparing, and analyzing everything that happens. This creates a distance between who we really are and how we perceive life. Imagine someone who fails at a professional project and, because of that, starts seeing themselves as incompetent. Every time they face a new challenge, that identity reinforced by thought triggers fear and insecurity, even if the current situation is completely different. All right, but how do we break free from this in practice? Let's get into the biggest lessons from the book. Lesson 1, Dairy. You are not your mind. One of the most powerful insights is realizing that you are not your mind. Most people live as hostages to their own thoughts, believing they must follow every idea that pops up as if it were an unquestionable command. But what if, instead of identifying with your thoughts, you just observe them? Tolle explains that freedom begins when we understand that we are not the thinker, we are the one who perceives the thoughts. He suggests watching our thoughts as if they were external rather than identifying with them. When we recognize that we are the awareness behind the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves, we start to experience a sense of liberation. Instead of saying, I am an anxious person, we can simply notice, there is anxiety present right now. This subtle shift weakens the mind's grip and allows our true essence to emerge. The mind-based identity loses its power when we live in the present and detach from the stories we tell ourselves. The key is learning to disidentify from the mind and connect with the present moment. Think of your mind like a radio playing non-stop. You can listen to it, but you don't have to attach yourself to every word. When you understand this, you create a space between you and your mind, allowing thoughts to pass by without controlling you. A common mistake people make when trying to apply this concept is fighting their thought stream to force their minds to be silent. But the more you resist, the louder it gets. The key is not to stop thinking, but to observe without judgment. This practice can be applied in simple daily moments. Imagine you're about to give your opinion in a conversation and you notice your mind judging what others might think. Instead of getting lost in those thoughts, try just observing them without engaging. This small shift creates an internal space that lets you act with more authenticity and less fear. Over time, this practice transforms how we handle emotional challenges. When anger, anxiety, or frustration arise, instead of automatically reacting, we can pause and observe how these emotions manifest in the body and mind. This interrupts the cycle of reactivity and gives us the choice to respond with greater awareness. Gradually, this detachment reduces suffering because we understand that emotions come and go, but they are not who we truly are. Lesson 2. The trap of psychological time. Another powerful concept in the book is the idea that psychological time is a trap. Suffering doesn't come from the present moment, it comes from clinging to the past or worrying about the future. The past is just a memory, and the future is just a projection. The only moment that truly exists is now. Have you ever noticed how children are naturally happy? They live fully in the present without dwelling on what happened yesterday or worrying about what might happen tomorrow. That state of presence is what brings peace. If you pay attention to your daily life, you'll realize that most of the time, your mind is somewhere else, either replaying past mistakes or projecting imaginary future scenarios. But when you train yourself to bring your attention back to the now, most of the problems that seemed huge suddenly lose their power. Lesson 3. The pain body. Another essential concept is the pain body. Tolle explains that we carry an accumulation of negative emotions from the past, and this emotional weight continues to influence our lives without us realizing it. When we identify with this pain, it grows. Imagine you had a bad experience years ago, and even today, every small thing that reminds you of it triggers intense suffering. It feels like the wound never heals, because in reality, it's constantly fed by your mind. The key isn't to run from pain, but to recognize it and observe it without being consumed by it. A practical way to deal with this is, whenever you feel a strong negative emotion, simply stop and observe it as an observer. Ask yourself, who is feeling this? That simple question creates distance between you and the pain, preventing it from taking over completely. When you do this, you realize that suffering isn't who you are, it's just a temporary experience. Lesson 4. The ego feeds on drama. Tolle also explains how the ego thrives on problems. The ego is that inner voice that needs drama to feel important. It wants to convince you that you are your stories, your traumas, your successes, your failures. But when you realize that all of this is just a mental construction, you begin to break free. The mind loves creating what if scenarios. What if I fail? What if people don't like me? This is the ego trying to keep you trapped in fear and insecurity. Whenever you notice your mind dramatizing, pause and ask, is this a fact? Or is this just a story I'm telling myself? Many times, we suffer over things that don't even exist simply because we create narratives in our heads. The ego operates from a mindset of scarcity. It is always seeking more, never satisfied with what already exists. Tolle explains that gratitude is one of the most effective ways to dissolve the ego because it shifts our focus to the abundance of the present moment. When we are truly grateful, there is no room for complaints, comparisons, or resentment, the very things that fuel the ego. The simple act of appreciating what we already have takes us out of an endless state of wanting and aligns us with the now. Imagine someone who is constantly dissatisfied with their job, always focusing on what's missing rather than what they already have. If that person starts cultivating gratitude, recognizing the opportunities and lessons their work provides, their perception changes. Instead of feeling like a victim of their circumstances, they become more present and find purpose in what they do. Gratitude doesn't change external events, but it transforms how we see them. A daily gratitude practice can be simple, just taking a moment to reflect on 3 things you are grateful for. This trains the mind to focus on the positive rather than constantly seeking external validation. Over time, this practice dissolves layers of the ego, as it eliminates the illusion that we need more to feel complete. When we recognize the beauty of the present, we free ourselves from the endless chase for something else and find peace in what we already have. Lesson 5. Mental silence. Another powerful insight in the book is the power of mental silence. We live in a world where the mind rarely rests. The constant stream of thoughts creates an overload of information that prevents us from experiencing true peace. Tolle teaches that mental silence doesn't mean absence of thought, but rather the ability to not identify with the activity of the mind. When we learn to appreciate moments of stillness, we create space for deeper awareness to arise and allow presence to grow stronger. A practical example of this is when we are in nature and, for a brief moment, feel a deep peace without any particular thought. That is our natural state of being, but the mind quickly tries to fill that space with worries or analysis. Mental silence occurs when we learn to remain in that state of presence without getting caught in the flow of thoughts. A simple exercise for this is to focus on your breath or a sound around you, like birds chirping, and just experience the moment without labeling or explaining it. Practicing mental silence doesn't mean thoughts will completely disappear, but rather that we learn to let them pass without clinging to them. Often, the answers to our biggest dilemmas arise in moments of stillness when the mind stops forcing solutions and intuition naturally emerges. This receptive state connects us to a deeper wisdom, beyond constant logic and analysis. Mental silence is so powerful that it directly impacts our creative ability. Many people believe that creativity comes from mental effort, but Tolle teaches that true creativity arises from presence. When we are fully in the now, without the interference of a restless mind, inspiration flows much more naturally. That's why great artists, musicians, and writers often say their best ideas come during moments of total immersion, when they're not worried about the outcome, just fully engaged in the process. If you've ever tried to force a creative idea and felt blocked, you know how overthinking can get in the way. The fear of failure, or the desire to create something perfect, can disrupt creative flow. However, when we allow ourselves to be fully present, without judgment, creativity emerges effortlessly. A painter, for example, who surrenders completely to the act of painting without worrying about what others will think, taps into a level of creation that is more authentic and profound. The practice of presence can be incorporated into the creative process through meditation or activities that connect us with the now. When we accept the moment as it is and let go of the need to control the outcome, we discover that creativity doesn't come from the analytical minded, it comes from a deeper state of connection. This doesn't mean that technique and knowledge aren't important, but rather that true creative potential is unlocked when there is space for intuition to express itself. And finally, one of the most important lessons of the book: acceptance is the key to inner peace. A significant part of our suffering comes from resisting the present moment. When we fight against what already is, we create tension, frustration, and pain. But when we accept reality as it is, we find peace. This doesn't mean giving up or doing nothing to improve your life. Instead, it means recognizing what is real right now before taking action. Resistance creates unnecessary suffering. For example, if you're stuck in traffic, you can either 1. Get frustrated and angry, wasting energy on something beyond your control, or 2. Lead, accept it, and use the moment to breathe, relax, or even listen to something inspiring. How much energy do we waste fighting things that have already happened and that we cannot change? Knowing all this, how to apply in real life. One of the most effective ways to live in the present is to train your attention. Throughout the day, take small pauses and focus on your breath as anchors you in the now. Another essential practice is to become an observer of your thoughts without identifying with them. When a negative thought arises, acknowledge it, but don't get emotionally involved. Acceptance is also a powerful tool. When something doesn't go as planned, instead of resisting and creating suffering, accept reality first and then act from that place. Now tell me, which of these lessons resonated with you the most? Drop a comment below. If you enjoyed this summary and want more transformative content, hit the like button and subscribe. And share this video with someone who needs to learn how to live more in the present. To dive deeper, get the book in physical or digital format through my Amazon affiliate link in the description and pinned comment. Doing so supports this channel and allows us to bring even more content for you. If this video helped you, leave a comment and let me know which book summary you'd like next. Check out the final screens for more compact wisdom. See you next time.